Okay, now I'm streaming. It's going to be delayed, of course. It always is delayed. I'm in Europe right now and set the alarm just to watch. Wow, what a nice thing.
Oh, nice, Minnie.
In the middle, 3 in the middle of the night. Oh my gosh! You know, by the way, not that I don't absolutely love that you're having that kind of dedication, but it is recorded and it is on YouTube. So if you need to get some sleep, you will be. Yes, we will be talking. So, anyways, let me finish one thought. I like a squirrel. Anyways, so if you need to go to sleep, you will be able to watch the replay on YouTube. So there's that. Not that I don't really appreciate you coming in to watch live, so that we
going sleep.
And so that we get those numbers. That's perfectly awesome. Yes, tonight is going to be a dual show. We're going to talk about Luigi Mangione for the first half of an hour, basically, and then we're going to talk about Brian Coberger for the second half of the hour. So
we love you for that, Minnie.
Unfortunately, I have to pick one or the other to go first. I'm going to pick Luigi to go first, which means that if you're here for the Brian Coberger stuff, you're going to have to wait a little bit of time to get through the Luigi stuff.
But you might get sucked in.
Yeah, but if you're not following one or the other, you might get sucked in. You never know. So I encourage you to stay for both, but we'll do Luigi Mangione from about 6 to about 6:30, 35, because I have a monologue and I don't want to cut Luigi's time short, so I might go to 6:35. I'll try to do like a 5-minute or less monologue, and then I'll give a good 30 minutes for Luigi, and then we'll give about 30 minutes for Kohberger, and then we will have open questions and answers. Like before, by the way, as a preview, my wife is prepared to give me a humiliation filter if we meet our gift goal. I've got a gift goal up here on TikTok. So if we reach that, last time we reached it in like 30 seconds. So I decided to set it a little higher. And if we don't reach it, no big deal. I'm not going to keep plugging it all through the event. But if I do happen to reach the gift goal, then during the question and answer period, I will turn on a humiliation filter, and I'll do the questions and answers with some kind of silly face on that. My wife and I have worked out what my punishment is tonight if we get the gift goal. So anyways, let's just let the room warm up for about another 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Alrighty, we're just gonna keep waiting here for about 5 minutes. Looks like we got a few people on YouTube as well. So I'm streaming. Hello, by the way, to Shelby on YouTube, and to those who are joining on TikTok. I'm simulcasting. Right now in my little home office, I have got a bright ass light in my face, which generates heat, 2 monitors generating heat, 2 video cameras, and about 7 computers and
what about this
microphones,
hot body over here?
And a hot-bodied wife right behind. So this is a hot space. I kid you not. So there you go. This is a little tight corner of my world, and it gets warmer and warmer as I add equipment to this setup.
You got banned?
My account got banned.
They were talking about Luigi's conversation with his attorney, how they recorded that.
Yes, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight as well. So you are warned. Are you warning me that you got banned for talking about it? I'm going to talk about it. Let's roll the dice. Thanks for the little hat thing I got, right? So that was awesome, except for it didn't say anybody. It didn't update it that I got a gift. That's so weird. So why did it not say I got a gift? Anyways, well, we again, I have a gift goal that if we happen to reach, there's the gift. So if we happen to reach our gift goal, then I will do a humiliation filter just for shits and giggles during the questions and answer. All right.
Hello from the UK.
I love that we have an international audience that tunes in. By the way, from the UK, I follow the Coberger case, and I've been told that Harsh Reality is the British me. I love the guy from Harsh Reality. I have some comments about him when we get to the Coberger section, but I have to kind of agree. He seems to be the British me, which is kind of funny.
Lulu is British too.
Yeah, Lulu is British. What are you talking about?
Lulu on here on TikTok.
Oh, okay. Got you. Okay. Yeah, I thought you were talking about Luigi. I'm like, Luigi's British? What? Gotcha. So welcome, Lulu. All right. So what are we looking for time? 3 minutes. 3 minutes in the period. And then we will get started on, again, simultaneously on YouTube. I do encourage you, by the way, I will do my best to make sure that we're centered. My screen up there is centered on TikTok. It's on YouTube. It's over here, but on TikTok, it's up there. I'll try to make sure that we're as best as we can in both places. It requires me to move things around on my overlays, but I will do my best. But if you want the full viewing, and I'm not going to do I keep telling you I'm not going to spend as much time reading. I am going to read. But I realize that you didn't come here for a bedtime story, and those who woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch this show are probably going to go to sleep if I read too much. So I'm trying to get in the habit of summarizing more. Part of the reason, by the way, before we get started, the reason why I read so much is because I don't feel like I guess I have a problem with feeling that people believe me when I'm talking. So I feel like if I read it to you word for word, you're not like, oh, you just pulled that out of your ass. Like, no, I'm going to read it to you word for word. So I feel like because I don't
trust you, though.
I know, but I feel like I have to always prove myself. Maybe I have some abuse and trauma in my life, and I have to always prove myself. But in my attempt to prove myself, I'd rather you see it with your own eyes. And thank you for the gifts, by the way. Thank you so much for the gifts. Again, if we can get up to our gift goal tonight, we'll do the humiliation filter, and at the end, and we will not have, by the way, we will not have a too hot for TikTok portion tonight. We are going to thanks for the gifts. That's amazeballs. Am I allowed to say that? Amazeballs?
You've been saying it, so.
Oh, good. All right. So, anyways. Yeah, there's not going to be a too hot for TikTok section tonight. I plan on being a good boy. I think I can talk about everything that I can talk about tonight without getting in trouble. So we will see how that rolls. There we go. Now we're like 13% to our gift goal. Now that's how you do it. That is how you do. We haven't even started and we're 13% to our gift goal. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I was going to say amaze something else, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want to repeat myself over and over again and really tempt the fates. So, and this is what I think is in the room. That's awesome. Thank you. You're like a super fan, a super subscriber, a super supporter. Thank you so much for all of that. Again, we're going to get started in about like 1 minute, and then I'm going to shut the hell up with all this stuff, and we'll get right into the show. If you want to call it a show, I call it a live, I call it a show, I call it interchangeably a lot of things, but what I don't call it is late for dinner. God, that's such a horrible joke. Anyways, and I got 2 cameras, by the way, tonight. So it used to be I was having a problem. Like I can't do the humiliation filter in TikTok without shutting the stream down unless I have 2 cameras. So now I've got 2 cameras on, multiple setups, all kinds of crap, all trying to figure out how to do this show a little better every time. I'm trying to improve my process a little bit. 2 o'clock here in the UK. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to whistle so loud. Thank you so much for checking in. All right, it is 6 o'clock. Let's get the regular business out of the way. Everything you're going to hear tonight, by the way, is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and that you should always rely on the court documents and things like that. I will, whenever possible, read straight from the court documents in mainstream media so that you understand what part is stuff that is verified and what part is speculative. If you watch my long form videos, I have a lot of times when I do a video and I'll put a big green verified over the screen whenever I say something that's coming straight out of a court document, and speculation when I'm not. Tonight what we're going to be doing, again, by the way, we're streaming again on YouTube and TikTok simultaneously. Again, if you want to see the bigger screen, go to YouTube. I would love it if you watch both places so that we can get watch hours on both of those. And again, we have a gift goal in TikTok that if we reach, I'll do the question and answer period at the end in a humiliation face filter. Unfortunately for TikTok, haven't figured out how to do that. Or not TikTok, YouTube, I haven't figured out how to do that. As you know, I follow 2 cases on Devil's Advocates, Luigi Mangione right now and Brian Coberger. That doesn't mean that that's the only cases we'll ever follow, but those are the 2 main cases. And tonight I'm going to split up the show into 2 parts. The first part's going to be Luigi Mangione for about a half hour, and then the last part's going to be about Brian Kohberger. As you know, Luigi Mangione had an arraignment today in federal court where he was arraigned and formally charged, including the death penalty charges against him. Luigi Mangione pled not guilty in that court. We're going to talk about a bombshell that was delivered at that court case about the prosecution illegally listening in on attorney-client privilege phone calls. That's a huge thing we're going to talk about for our first half hour. Feel free to ask questions, by the way, during my presentation about both sides, Luigi or Brian Kohberger, and we'll kind of get to those. My wife will tap me on the shoulder or whatever if I need to take a break and answer some questions. This is different than at the very, very end when we have questions and answers, which will be anything you want to take. It could be both cases. It can be a case that I'm not covering right now. You can ask anything you want during the questions and answers. But while I'm talking about Luigi, feel free to fire those questions in.
Somebody wants to know, how can they listen to those phone calls with the lawyers?
I will explain that in a minute. Second part is going to be on Brian Coberger around 6:30, 6:35 Pacific Standard Time. We're going to get talking about Stephen Hippler's latest ruling on a bunch of defense motions to exclude certain expert testimony. And in my opinion, there was a bombshell in there as well about multiple assailants that basically conducted the crime of the 4 individuals in the Idaho 4 case, and how there was an expert in forensics who states that it was multiple attackers with multiple weapons, and we'll get into that. And also into some comments by Steve Gonzalez, who lately was on the Drunk Turkey show and gave some interesting insights that I want to comment about. So that's the 2 parts of the show. Let's go ahead and get into it. Again, first part right now we got done in less than 5 minutes, so we're going to do about a half hour. We'll go to about 6:30, 33, 35, somewhere in there on Luigi Mangione. All right, so as you know, today in New York, Luigi Mangione was in court. We didn't get to see him. There was no court cameras in the courtroom. And also, from what I understand, Karen Agnifilo, his attorney, did not come out to the press. I was watching the live stream, and I watched when the police officially came out and took the barricades down and told the press to go home because the lawyers had already left the building. So as far as I know, unless they came back after I left, they told everybody that the lawyers had left and it was over, go home. I was told by various people that Luigi was smiling and in good spirits in the courtroom. He was wearing a prison jumper and all those good things. Some people were saying that he was seen crying in the courtroom, but there was apparently a lot of debate online that no, he was not crying. He was in good spirits. He was smiling. He was laughing. He was talking to his attorneys. Everything was good. It was positive mood. Somebody decided that they wanted to get out there that he was breaking down crying in the courtroom. I don't think that's true. I think that's somebody's vicious rumor that they wanted to start in the middle of the whole thing, because there's trolls everywhere and they just want to get attention. So I think that it was all positive mood. However, Luigi Mangione pled not guilty as we expected in the federal court, and some new information came out. The trial date is the actual trial is going to happen in 2026. I'm sorry, people, this is going to be a long process. In addition, Karen Agnifilo is making basically a move to try to have the federal case go first. So if you are not aware, let me repeat slowly. Luigi Mangione is facing 3 different jurisdictions: the state of New York, the federal government in New York, and the state of Pennsylvania, or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. 3 different court systems. Originally, while Luigi Mangione is in federal custody, the federal government said that they were going to let the New York State case go first. However, Karen Agnifilo is basically arguing, essentially, because the death penalty is on the case, why not just go for the big death penalty case first and do that before the state trial? So that's going to be something that's going to be ruled on. But right now, currently, we have a date set for May-ish sometime for some discovery to be handed over to the defense. And that December-ish, I think it's December 15th, maybe, if I remember off the top of my head, there's a date for the setting of the trial. The trial and the federal trial will begin sometime in 2026. That's the current schedule that we're looking at right now. So, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of downtime, and there's going to be a lot of this discovery information coming out over the course of this year, and so we're just going to have to, slow down a little bit and go through there. Now, this is the big one. At the arraignment today, Karen Agnifilo gave a bombshell in a soft-pedaled way. I thought that's bizarre. What she indicated, as she said, that she has obtained information, and I believe she obtained it, and this is super interesting, she obtained it from the Southern District of New York, that the prosecutors in the state had been eavesdropping in on phone calls between her and her client, Luigi Mangione. Let me state for the record, this is illegal for them to do. And I will also state for the record, it's not the first time that they've done it. They've been under investigation for spying on attorney-client privileged information. It is illegal. People on the prosecution could, in theory, go to jail. It's not likely to happen, but I want to cover all of that in detail for you so that you can see it. So yes, before I cover an article for you to see it in your own eyes, because again, I feel like people don't believe me if I don't show it. It is illegal. It is a violation of the New York Penal Law, sections 250 and 250.05. Unauthorized eavesdropping as a Class E felony. But let's get into this first. Let's get into an article talking about what happened. Here you see People magazine. You should see it. Looks good on both TikTok and YouTube. Someone is eavesdropping on Luigi Mangione's phone calls with lawyers, attorneys claim. This is from today, right? From today. During the appearance, Mangione's lawyer, Karen Agnifilo, alleged that the judge that her team had received information that his calls with attorneys have been listened to by prosecutors in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which is prosecuting a separate state case. So the state prosecutors are eavesdropping on her attorney-client privileges. This is illegal activity. And it's interesting because here's the paragraph that's interesting. The alleged eavesdropping was inadvertent, Agnifilo was told. So in other words, she's saying, I'm told that they're spying on our phone calls, but it was by accident. They didn't mean to do it, which I'm going to tell you is bullshit, and I'll prove it to you. They've been caught doing it before. They're under investigation for it. It's an ongoing thing. It is not an accident. But she soft-pedaled it. Hey, you guys are listening to our phone calls, and that's illegal. I've been told it was an accident, but you need to look into it. So she reiterated the measures be put in place to ensure that Mangione is offered a privacy and required to protect her attorney-client privileges. So Judge Margaret Garnett, that's the new judge, that's the federal judge that's assigned to this case. She will be the judge that's going to oversee the federal trial. She's a relatively new appointment. Yeah?
Can you fix that, make the ad go away?
I can't really make the ad go.
Zoom in.
I can zoom in a little.
I mean TikTok.
Oh. I'm trying to fix TikTok. My wife's giving me the whole, let's make it a little easier for people to read. All right. This is about as good as I'm going to get. All right. So Judge Margaret Garnett ordered Assistant U.S. Attorney Dominic Gentile to produce a letter by May 2nd assuring that the court that Mangione is being provided an appropriate line to speak to his attorney. So in other words, the judge is ordering the U.S. Attorney to basically produce a letter certifying that Luigi Mangione has a private line and is not going to be spied on any longer. But he has been spied on, and this is a big deal. I'm going to make it into a big deal, at least. Let's see. With regards to the allegations that the calls were overheard inadvertently, Judge Garnett asked Gentile to provide information on what the government is doing to ensure Mangione's calls with his lawyers remain protected. So she's investigating it, the judge. And I've told you before, a good thing about this judge is it seems she's not real tolerant of law enforcement shenanigans or prosecutorial shenanigans. She believes in having a fair trial. So this is a good thing. She's going to hopefully hold them accountable. We'll see. Gentile acknowledged the allegation and said they would look into the matter. So they've acknowledged, hey, okay, you're saying that your phone calls are being spied on. We'll look into it. And the judge ordered the government to provide discovery by May 27th. So that's when they have to have all the discovery, or at least a major portion of the discovery, over to Karen Agnifilo, the defense team, so they can start preparing for the trial date to be set by December 5th. I said December 15th before, but it's December 5th. So there's a precursor. Now, here's the shocker I want you to understand. Again, under New York penal law, sections 250 and 250.5, unauthorized eavesdropping on your client attorney privileges is a Class E felony. It is punishable by up to 4 years in prison. So if they could identify the person who authorized the wiretapping or the eavesdropping on the phone call, they could, in theory, go to jail. Will it happen? No, I don't think it's going to happen. But it's technically punishable by 4 years in prison. What is probably more likely, in my guess, I'm not an attorney, I'm guessing, more likely is that it could be basically a grounds for the prosecution to be replaced. In other words, any of the attorneys that got privileged information from a wiretapped or eavesdropped phone call could be dismissed from this case, and a new prosecutor have to be put in place because this prosecutor has done something illegal and violated the Sixth Amendment. Thank you, by the way, for bringing that up into the thing. This is not just a violation of the New York penal law; it's also a violation of the United States Sixth Amendment. So it is illegal on multiple parts. When eavesdropping infringes on your attorney-client privileges, it not only violates the state law, but also the U.S. constitutional protections of the Sixth Amendment. See, I had that in my notes. I just hadn't gotten to it yet. So thank you very much. Now, here's what I want to tell you about this has happened before. Look at this article. I'm going to make sure it's nice and centered for you. This is the New York Public Defender New York City Public Defenders file a class action lawsuit against the Department of Corrections over unlawful mass surveillance system. This will blow you away if you haven't heard this before. On behalf of incarcerated New Yorkers, as well as the community members they speak with on the telephone, the Bronx Defenders, Brooklyn Defenders, New York County Defender Services, and Cleary, Gottlieb, Stein, and Hamilton LLP have filed a class action lawsuit Monday evening against New York City Department of Corrections, seeking to end its unlawful mass surveillance. Pay attention. Department of Corrections telephone systems, in practice, is a mass surveillance project primarily targeting Black, brown, and low-income New Yorkers. Universal recording of subjects, incarcerated people, and their loved ones to an unprecedented level of government monitoring and data collection. The system monitors and records nearly every call and has recorded thousands of confidential calls between attorneys and their incarcerated clients. Department of Corrections collects not only the substance of these conversations, but also biometric, financial, and other personal information of everyone who participates in a call on its network. You pick up a phone and they're collecting DNA evidence, or what? They're collecting biometrics over people who are talking to the people in their prison system. It is a mass surveillance system. They are under investigation, class action lawsuit, for this illegal practice of spying on people and their private conversations with their attorneys and clients. It is a major problem. I don't understand how this is not a way bigger deal for everybody else. The Department of Corrections surveillance system is operated by Securus Technologies, a private contractor with a history of unlawful surveillance practices and data breaches in other jurisdictions around the country. So this has been going on for a while. This company, who they're using in their Department of Corrections, has been spying on people for a while. It's not new. So Karen's saying, hey, we just found out, hey, it's inadvertent. Inadvertent, but you've been doing it for a long time. In the guise of a phone,
Hi, Christy.
In the guise of a phone service system, the Department of Corrections has conducted a full-scale domestic spying program with the help of Securus. Collecting, storing, and sharing deeply personal biometric, this bothers me. What biometric information are they gathering on people? Anyways, and financial information on New Yorkers. So you come in and talk to somebody in the prison system and they're gathering your biometrics and your financial information, wanting to know who you're talking to in the prison system. Am I under suspicion now because I'm talking to somebody in the prison system? I'm losing my mind over here. Department of Corrections and Securus unlawfully exposes countless people to government surveillance on the sole basis of their being detained pre-trial or wanting to speak with a loved one who is in Department of Corrections custody. Let us not forget, in this country, you have the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court of law. Just because somebody's in the correctional system does not mean they're guilty. A lot of these people are awaiting their trial to be proven innocent of something that they didn't do. So in technicality, they are innocent until proven guilty, and yet they're being spied on like they're already criminals because, hey, you're in a jail system, you must be a criminal. Yeah, did you have something? All right.
Well, since I have your attention, so this is what I think says. Yes, for years, Securus would not allow cell phones because they could not track them. Also,
yeah.
Shelby was able to go inside the courtroom and saw Luigi. He wasn't crying. He was in good spirits and looks healthy, smiling, she said. Also that someone else said that he was able to hug his attorneys.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. We had an inside person in the courtroom, and I do believe that all the reports were that he was smiling and in good spirits, and that whole he was crying thing was BS. Anyways, let's continue on with this illegal practice of the Department of Corrections spying on attorney-client privileges. All right. Department of Corrections.
Hi, Sarah, you missed it.
Department of Corrections mass surveillance system violates incarcerated New Yorkers' rights to privacy and association, chills their willingness to speak to their attorneys. Listen to this. It chills their willingness to speak to their attorneys. How can you get a proper defense if you're afraid to speak to your attorney because you know they're tapping your phone? You need to be very blunt with your attorney, and you need to not worry about what the prosecution's going to use against you, because it's like a Miranda rights thing. You have the right to not self-incriminate yourself. Talking on a conversation where the prosecution is taking notes on everything you say. Let me say the only way this would be fair is if Karen Ignifilo gets to put a wire and a bug inside the prosecutor's office to see everything they're planning to do to Luigi Mangione and listen to all their conversations. That would be the only way it's fair. Having one side be able to bug the conversation and not the other is not fair. It's illegal. All right. The lawsuit comes after the Department of Corrections unlawfully recorded thousands of privileged telephone conversations between people in DOC custody and their defense attorneys. This has been going on for thousands of criminals or alleged criminals, innocent people who are awaiting their trials. They've been doing it for thousands of people, and they've filed a class action lawsuit. Every New Yorker has the right to privacy, especially when speaking with their attorney. Recording conversations between individuals awaiting trial and legal counsel is not only immoral, but unlawful. And I could go on and on and on. I'm trying to limit. I think this purple one is important to read. Undeterred by these issues, the Department of Corrections has continued to renew and expand its now $5.4 million contract with Securus without conducting performance reviews or public hearings that are required under New York City Procurement Policy Board rules. In other words, they know they have a class action lawsuit. They've been told they're doing something illegal, and not only have they not looking into it, they're still spending more money securing contracts to continue doing it, even though they've been told what you're doing is illegal. They don't give a shit. People, they don't give a shit. That should be a problem for all of us. Now, I want to point out another thing. They're up to the same shenanigans, and I realize this next part you're not going to have a lot of sympathy with, in the sense that it has to do with Sean P. Diddy Combs, which I'm sure a lot of people have no sympathy for P. Diddy Combs. But I want to remind you, Mark Agnifilo, Karen's husband, is representing Sean P. Diddy Combs. The same thing is happening over there. Prosecutors have been ordered not to use documents that they seized from Sean Diddy Combs' jail cell until it can be determined whether or not they're protected by attorney-client privilege. So Diddy's meeting with Mark Agnifilo, he's got notes about their meetings in his jail cell, and the Department of Corrections came in and scooped up all his notes, and then they're going through his notes to see what they can garner to use against him in trial.
Wow.
That's his attorney, and those are client-protected documents. They don't give a shit about protecting people's privacy or their attorney-client privileges. So this is, it should be unbelievable and horrendous to anyone who's watching this. So both of the Agnifilos and both of their high-profile cases are having the state essentially try to illegally obtain client, attorney, privileged information to use against them in a court. This is a problem. And then let's see. I wanted to cover a couple more things. Did you guys? So here's a couple more things I was going to say before we get to questions and answers on Luigi. I made record time. I did that in 15 minutes. I said I was going to give us a good half hour. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to say other than. Did you see the guy outside of the courtroom today that had the electric chair with Luigi Mangione, the effigy of a skeleton with Luigi's outfit on it in the electric chair, and a sign being held up saying "F Luigi," and he
Did
got
he get mobbed?
on Scott. Yes, that was Scott. No, he did not get mobbed. He got interview time. He got interviewed on TV. Do you think they should execute him? Damn right they should execute him. F Luigi. And he got his time. He's apparently an artist. He got his 15 minutes of fame or more by having a electric chair out there and showing that he's all for executing Luigi Mangione. And that was.
He probably doesn't know crap.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. That was very theatrical. Also, someone pointed out, and I think this is somewhat true. There were some elderly. No, I'm elderly. There were some women my age who were standing out by the courtroom holding signs about Luigi, but the press focused on the young pretty girls to try and suggest that the only people who give a shit about Luigi Mangione are young pretty girls, and that they're all just a bunch of nutbags. It's this young, youthful generation, trying to ignore that there are people from all walks of life and all age spectrums who believe in presumption of innocence in this country until proven guilty in a court of law. But they want to focus on this is just a bunch of you young liberal wackos who are hero worshiping a good-looking guy, which is, again, not exactly what's going on. And as another note, before we get into questions and answers about Luigi, in case you think I'm missing something, I want to give you an opportunity during this to just ask questions about Luigi. It appears that Luigi Mangione has updated his famous letter log. Did you hear about that? So LuigiMangioneInfo.com, right? If you go, I'm going to show that on the screen. Let me get it centered a little bit for you on TikTok. If you go to FAQs and you go to this, all these FAQs, and there's something like, let's see. How do I know if Luigi is receiving the mail that I'm sending to him? You expand that, and they've got this letter log that Luigi has been keeping. It has been updated some more. I will let you know on a personal level, I did write a letter to Luigi Mangione. It's not on the list yet, but he is getting letters from around the time that I wrote him. But again, he's so backlogged right now. He's got bags and bags of mail, I'm sure, and he's getting it in bits and pieces. But here you look. My letter was sent, for example, on the 10th of April. So here's his log from the 10th of April on. I've checked all this, and you can see he's got a lot of dates in there. These dates are the postmark dates. So there's 12/24, 12/26. He's still getting stuff from December, and now it's April. But you'll look sporadically in here. There's some, and you can't see where my finger's at on the screen, but sporadically in here, there's a 4/7 date. So on 4/11, he got a letter from April 7th.
What's this date?
He got a letter from, that's 12/23.
What's that date, though?
4/7.
Oh, these are two different columns.
Yeah, this is columns.
Oh,
columns.
okay. Got it.
So as you can see, Luigi Mangione is getting his mail sporadically, but he has updated it. So if you've written a letter to him and you want to know if your letter's getting there is updated information of letters that he's getting as recently as this month, but it's mixed in with a crap ton of letters from December. So it's super sporadic. It probably literally is just a mail room full of stuff, and they just grab a few when they have time and they give it to him. And there's probably no real concern about how old some of those letters are or how new they are. So just wanted to let you know that. Okay, let's take a moment to look at both chat windows and see if there's anything that comes out for questions or answers for this last 7 minutes or so for Luigi Mangione. Yvette says you wrote on 1/7 and didn't get it until 4/2. So yeah, it took 3 months, but he did get it apparently. So good, excellent. How are they able to pursue the death penalty? Well, so let me. That's something I wanted to mention. Thank you, Rose, for bringing that out on TikTok. So yes, the federal government has chosen to to seek the death penalty in Luigi Mangione's case. But keep in mind, Karen Agnifilo already has a motion to toss out the death penalty and a whole bunch of what I consider to be strong grounds for why it should do so, including that the trial was prejudiced and the grand jury was prejudiced, and all these things were prejudiced by the U.S. Attorney General's big show going on public TV and saying that Luigi Mangione is a murderer of an innocent man and should get the death penalty. So what does that mean? It means that while the government has officially charged Luigi Mangione with murder and the death penalty, they've decided to seek the death penalty. Margaret, I think is her name, right? The Garnett, the judge in this case, still has to decide whether or not to toss it out, the death penalty. So it hasn't been ruled on, as far as I understand. She has not made a ruling on whether or not she's going to toss out the death penalty. So they can ask for it, which they have asked for it, but whether or not it's going to be granted or not is still, I think, a motion that has not been ruled on yet. Thank you for asking. Let's see. Let's look for some more questions. If you see anything.
So there's a couple things.
Yeah.
So there were many people that were of different backgrounds and ages out there, according to a couple people.
Yes.
And also, somebody said that loser artist caused several people to donate to his fundraiser. So he wasn't completely useless.
Oh, to Luigi's fundraiser?
Yeah.
You mean like they had a counter reaction to his? Yeah, that's funny.
No,
that's hilarious. How is it a federal case? The motion was denied without prejudice, and she's going to have to refile. So the federal case is brought because of, let me clarify, because somebody asked, how is it a federal case? Here's how it's a federal case. The federal case is brought because allegedly the person who shot Brian Thompson had to have used public transportation like buses across interstate highways from one state into another state. We have basically this setup that says if you travel, so if you commit a crime within your own state, it's purely a state crime. But if you go across borders from one state into another state, now the federal government has allowed themselves to get involved because to get from one state to another state, you had to go on federal property and you traveled across federal property to commit a crime. So they're using that, and they have used it for forever, as basically a way to try someone federally for a crime that took place in a state. So because allegedly Luigi Mangione traveled on interstate highways or whatever to get to that state, that means it's a federal crime as well. And New York City or New York State hasn't executed somebody or sought the death penalty since like 2004, I think it was. But the federal government has a renewed interest. By the way, the Biden administration had basically done away with capital murder for federal cases and said that the U.S. government wasn't in the business anymore of executing people by seeking the death penalty in federal cases. When Trump took office, he went and reinstated the practice of the United States going after people for the death penalty and seeking the death penalty. So under that direction of Donald Trump, and I don't want to make this political, this isn't about Republicans and Democrats, but under Trump's administration, he directed his administration and those who work under him, including Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, to start seeking the death penalty again in cases. And so that's why we have the death penalty in this case. They will not get a unanimous jury for DP, not happening. I agree with that. What's happening in the PA motions? Let's talk about the Pennsylvania motions. So good questions. So in Pennsylvania, Luigi Mangione's attorney is Thomas Dickey. Thomas Dickey filed a motion well over a month ago saying that the arrest in Altoona, Pennsylvania was illegal. That Luigi Mangione, first of all, did not commit a crime when presenting false identification to police officers because he had not been identified. He had not been told he was under investigation, and that's not a crime to provide false identification to an officer if you haven't been informed you're under investigation. There were several other things that were wrong with that detention in Thomas Dickey's eyes, which was cornering him in a corner, making a wall of officers surrounding him, making him stand up and pat him down, and interrogating him for 17 minutes before even telling him that he was under investigation or reading his Miranda rights, all of which are illegal. So Thomas Dickey filed a motion over a month ago saying that's an illegal arrest. You need to toss out everything you got on Luigi Mangione and pack sand. Now, a judge in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania gave the prosecution 30 days to respond to that motion, saying it was an illegal arrest. And that 30 days has expired. That expired, I believe, on April 16th, I believe. April 16th, they were supposed to have done a motion. Nobody has officially explained why the prosecution did not meet the deadline. They did not respond to Thomas Dickey. They've completely ignored it. But insider information online says that the judge has granted an extension, giving the prosecution more time to respond to Thomas Dickey's motion. There is a legal term, which I had in my last live, that says at some point Thomas Dickey can seek a higher court to force the lower court to respond. In other words, they can't just ignore it for forever and go, well, we're just going to ignore your request that it's illegal and we're just going to pretend like it didn't happen. We're going to proceed as normal. No, they have to at some point respond to it. That is unclear of when they have to, because again, a judge has granted, allegedly, an extension of time. It has not been stated how long that extension has been granted for. But at some point, Thomas Dickey can file a motion, and let me see if I can get the exact. It's well, maybe I can't find it. Oh yes, maybe I can. Mandamus. Yes, a writ of mandamus. There it is, a writ of mandamus. That is what it's called when you file basically a request to have a higher court review the actions of the lower court and force them to respond. So it's possible that he could file a writ of mandamus in this case and force their hand to make a response. All right. So, and now all of a sudden I have a horrendous mistake that I just made. I'm trying to find my notes for tonight's show, which apparently just went away. All my Coberger stuff. Nope, got it back. I'm good. All right. All right. Anything else? We got about maybe 3 or 4 minutes left on Luigi specifically, and then we're moving to Kohberger. And thank you, by the way, if you stayed just for Luigi, and if you're gonna cut out. Thank you even more if you decide to stay for the Kohberger stuff. I think that you'll find that it is interesting. If you're not following it yet. If you are, you already know it's interesting. So let's give it another minute or two for last minute questions on Luigi Mangione. And again, at the very end, at about 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I will do an open questions and answer. And by the way, again, open questions and answer will potentially have, probably doesn't look like it, but it potentially would have a humiliation factor filter on for TikTok if we meet our gift goal. But we're not on that pace right now. Go ahead.
Someone said that when the guards are transporting Luigi, they call him Chuck.
Chuck?
Yeah.
Why do they call him Chuck?
I don't know.
Is that just an insult like, hey, Chuck? Like, I don't know. Where's that come from? Chuck.
I don't know.
Huh. All right. Will you officiate our wedding once he's released? You know what? If you come to Washington or Oregon State, I probably can officiate the wedding. I've got a light. It's Washington. I would have to perform that in Washington. Never mind. I could perform a wedding. So yeah, bring him to Washington, and I'll hook you up. Maybe you weren't talking to me. Did you hear about the Reddit rumor that he had a stalker for the months before December 4th? If you're talking about Brian Thompson, yes, Brian Thompson had death threats and potentially a stalker for months before the shooting. Yes. Chuck Mangione, that would be it. Oh my gosh, I could actually hum that song that Chuck Mangione was famous for on the trumpet. That's how old I am.
I don't know anything about this. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. Anything else? We got a few more minutes for Luigi Mangione questions. Did Mark speak out? This is from YouTube. Did Mark speak out at all, or just KFA? Sorry, so many questions. No. Mark Agnifilo did not speak out at this event. No. But the Mark Agnifilo, I believe, has filed basically a similar complaint against the Department of Corrections for basically spying on attorney-client privilege and trying to take P. Diddy's notes from his jail cell. But that wasn't covered in today's thing. That was something I uncovered as I was going through my notes for today's show.
Do we know if Luigi got his laptop?
I don't know for 100% fact whether Luigi got his laptop. As you probably know, the prosecution wanted him not to have a laptop, and the judge said that they had no problem. It was a different judge at the time. It wasn't Margaret Gurnett. I think it was, gosh, what was his name? Anyways, it was a different judge. Rosario? Anyways, I can't. Caro. So anyways, yeah, I think he said that it was okay for Luigi, in his opinion, to have a laptop as long as the Department of Corrections allowed it. So that kind of put the ball in the I think he does have the laptop. I think Luigi has had a laptop. And by the way, about the laptop situation, real briefly, is the last thought for Luigi Mangione. As I've stated before, there's no way the defense in Luigi Mangione's case is going to use a mental capacity, insanity type defense for Luigi Mangione. And the reason being that we know that in part is because of that laptop. Because in order to do the insanity defense, you basically have to say that your client is incapable in assisting you with his own defense. And saying we need a laptop so that Luigi can help us with his defense is contrary to that. They've already basically shot that whole idea. If you have any idea that this is going to be somehow an insanity defense, no, it's not going to be insanity defense, because they wouldn't have been asking for a laptop for Luigi to assist with his own defense if he's got mental issues and is insane. So we can throw that out the window. What do I think about, question, what do we think about the judge considering throwing out the DP charge? I don't know if you're asking me, maybe you're asking the audience in the room. This is from YouTube. But yes, again, my opinion is the judge, Margaret Garnett in this case, has the ability to rule and say that we're taking the death penalty off the table. You guys have made too many prejudicial things. So you're just going to have to work with life in prison without the possibility of parole. We're taking it off and I hope for all of our sake, and I say that because basically just as a person who doesn't believe that the death sentence is applicable in this case, is what happens. I hope that they will take it off the table and we can stop talking about the death penalty. But even so, as my final thought on Luigi before we transition to Kohberger now, as my final thought on Luigi, my gut tells me there's no way Luigi Mangione is getting the death penalty. He may be charged with the death penalty. The judge may uphold the proceeding with the death penalty. But after Luigi Mangione is found guilty or innocent, and let's say for some reason that he is found guilty, then they have to basically re-impanel the same jury to say, now that you say he's guilty of it, is death, putting this man to death, the only appropriate sentence? And I can't see that even potentially happening. That jury is not going to both unanimously convict him and believe that the only appropriate sentence is execution in a state where they don't believe in the death penalty. Again,
there's no way the juror's going to put him to death.
There's
no way.
I feel like, I can't promise anybody obviously, but I feel like you can kind of put together the fears that they're actually going to execute him even if they try. I don't think a jury is going to do that. And I just don't think that. I mean, yes, juries surprise people all the time, but I just don't think that's going to happen. All right, we're now moving to Brian Kohberger. And again, thank you for the Luigi people that have shown up. I hope you got your questions answered. There is another opportunity at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for open questions and answers if you think of another question.
And you get to see him in a funny hat if you guys give enough gifts.
Yeah, we're not on pace very well, but if you get this GIF going on TikTok, I will do the humiliation filter. If you didn't see it last time, it was pretty funny.
I'll help out. Let's get some gifts going.
It's some funny shit. All right. Now to Brian Kohberger. So I got a lot of thoughts on Brian Kohberger as we transition to this. There's some new court documents that came out, if you haven't paid attention, that came out yesterday. And it's basically a ruling. The main one that we're focusing on is a ruling by Stephen Hippler, the judge, Stephen Hippler, on various motions that were filed by the defense to basically limit or exclude testimony of various people based on their objections. And Stephen Hippler, in my opinion, and again, I'm not saying that Brian Kohberger isn't involved in this what he's accused of. I'm not saying he is. Although again, let me repeat for the millionth time, he has the presumption of innocence until proven guilty in a court of law. But even if he was involved, Stephen Hippler seems to really, really be a biased judge, in my opinion. And most people who are watching this see that he's a biased judge. He purposely tunes out, looks bored when the defense is talking, and every single time the defense argues for something with good cause, he tells them, nope, denied, nope, denied, move on. I see no reason why we can't do everything. He just, almost nothing they ask for, he ever agrees. And I know some of you think, if you're on the guilter side of this equation, that they're asking for pie in the sky stuff. I would maintain you probably aren't paying attention to the details of those objections, because some of them are quite substantial. But he is super biased, in my opinion. So basically, yeah. What?
It's not appropriate now.
Oh, I'm showing Luigi on screen. Yeah, let's go to let me just go back to this generic here. Oh, by the way, as a quick plug, don't forget that on the Idaho 4 and the Luigi Mangione case on my website that you're seeing, I do have timelines for both. So I'll just pull up the Idaho 4 timeline and we'll get that loading on the screen just to kind of show you a preview of that. But anyways, here's the big shocker. I want to show several shockers from this basically thing. But the big one was an individual by the name of Brent Turvy, who I had never heard of before today. I don't know how I missed this. I don't know if it was in there somewhere else. But this is the document we're going to focus on. This is the big document. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, so relax. But I am going to read portions of it, so try to get your nightcap on. This is from 4/24. This is yesterday. And basically this is Hippler's response to a bunch of defense motions. This is what it says in that first paragraph. The defendant moves to limit or exclude several experts' testimony. I need to center this? I need to center this a bit better on the screen for our TikTok audience. There we go. Okay, so basically the defendant, who's Brian Kohberger's team, moves to limit or exclude some expert testimony, and the state responded that they have done everything properly and that the disclosures are sufficient. So oral arguments on that argument between the defense and the prosecution was held on April 9th, after which the court took it under advisement, and now comes Judge Hippler's ruling. The court finds no basis to exclude or limit the disclosed expert testimony at this time, but if the defendant believes an expert is testifying at trial outside of the scope of his or her disclosure, he may object. He should say, or she may object, because Ann Taylor is a female. He or she may object at that time, and the court will consider it. So, what does that say? It means on every single case that the defense has asked for them to exclude something that a expert testimony is flawed in some way, he said, nope. Prosecution can say whatever the hell they want in my courtroom. They can say whatever the hell they want because he's biased. He already has decided which is the case. And then he basically said, but, and here's the carrot for them, but you're allowed to argue it in court. Thank God at least he gave them that. He could have said, nope, not only are they allowed to do it, but you're not allowed to counter anything they say. At least he said, yeah, they can say whatever they want in court. And if you have a problem with it, you can argue about it in court in front of the jury. So there's that good thing. But let's get to the shockers, or the shocker, the big shocker. So first, the not so shocker. Jenny Ayers is one of the people that they complained about, the defense. They said Jenny Ayers is just a forensic specialist who is talking about just how DNA in general is basically gathered. This one paragraph, I'm summarizing. See, I'm getting better. I'm not reading you the whole thing. This one paragraph I thought was important. They talked about processing the defendant's Pullman apartment, that's Brian Kohberger's apartment, and his Washington State University office. I didn't even think, but it makes total sense. Brian Kohberger was a teaching assistant. He had an office at the University of, not the University of Washington. Oh my God, I went to school at WSU, and people will shoot you if you keep, I shouldn't say that. I can't say that on TikTok. People will unalive you if you and that's it, that's the last time you're going to hear me say that. Anyways, if you say University of Washington State University, Brian Kohberger had an office there, so they also collected evidence from his apartment and from his office at the Washington State University, including photographing and collecting evidence, blah blah blah. So basically they had some problems with what it is exactly this person's going to say. Specifically, they point out, much like in law enforcement, Mrs. Ayers is a hybrid fact/expert witness, as opposed to a traditional expert. So she's not an expert in this field that they're going to have her on the stand for. So they're saying, look, she's just like law enforcement. Law enforcement can tell you what they did and what they collected when they're on scene, but they're not a forensics expert per se. So she is not a forensic expert. Let's get that clear. So that was just kind of a fight they had there. They're also fighting again about Nicholas Balance. And this is, I think, a huge thing that Ann Taylor is focusing on, is shenanigans by Nicholas Balance and the whole exclusion and picking what he wants to show about the timing advance records that place Brian Kohberger at the scene or around the scene during good points. And as the defense has brought in their own specialist, Cy Ray, which he's mentioned right here. If you're looking on the screen, there's the paragraph about Cy Ray. You can see him kind of highlighting it a little bit. Cy Ray basically said, hey, Balance is not showing all the data. He knows that there's data that is exculpatory to Brian Kohberger. What that means is there's data that he says Nick Balance is hiding because it would make Brian Kohberger look not guilty. And so Nick Balance has to show the whole story or not show any of the story. They're fighting about that. What did Hippler decide? Hippler decided, I got no problem with Balance showing you a partial story. And if you've got a problem with what he's doing, you can fight it out in court. So no, he's not going to let them talk about this before the jury. The jury is now going to have to hear both sides fight out about whether or not Nick Balance is hiding shit, and they have to do that in front of a jury instead of getting it handled prior to the court happening. So that was interesting. And now I think we're going to get into, to the extent that this is his Hippler's summary point. To the extent that the defendant believes Agent Balance omitted important data or is relying on insufficient data for his opinions, that is fodder for cross-examination, not for exclusion. Moreover, if an opinion is not reasonably set forth within the disclosure, it will not be allowed. There's two things that he's saying there. One, you may think that he's omitting information, and if that's the case, then that's fodder for cross-examination. You can do it under cross. However, if he doesn't bring up something that allows you to go into that area, you're not allowed to bring it up. So in other words, Ann Taylor has the job now of trying to trick Nick Balance into admitting that he hid some information. If she can get him to, on the stand, make a mistake and admit that he hid some information, then she's allowed to go after it. But she can't accuse him of admitting information unless she can get him in a thing. So this is going to be a huge game of cat and mouse on the stand as she tries to see if she's smarter than Nick Balance from the FBI to get him to incriminate himself and make a mistake so that she can question him further. So those are tough things for that situation. Then they talk about how there's gaps in Brian Kohberger's Chrome history, his Chrome browser and his PC, which suggests that there were certain dates where downloads happened that he had basically cleared out the browsing data. Therefore, they're trying to imply that during the critical time of the murders between November 11th and November 16th, and again, the murders happened on November 13th. So between the 11th and the 16th, they're saying Brian Kohberger deleted some history of his Chrome browser, and that shows that he's trying to hide something. There's some fight about that. Ultimately, Judge Hippler said that's all allowed to come into court, and if you don't like it, you can fight about it in court. Fair enough. At least they get to fight about it in court. He could have said they weren't even allowed to do that. All right, comes now the big one. This is what we're going to spend most of our time on. Darren Gilbertson with ISP, which I believe, I should have double checked this, which I believe is the Idaho State Police. So just like Washington State, where I grew up, the Washington State Patrol is WSP, ISP I think is the Idaho State Police. Darren Gilbertson, defendant, that is Brian Kohberger's team, disclosed expert opinions from Brent Turvy. Who's Brent Turvy? I learned a lot about Brent Turvy before this show. that more than one assailant was necessary to accomplish the crime in the time frame alleged. What? There is an expert that has come forward through Darren Gilbertson with the Idaho State Police called Brent Turvy. He's an expert in forensics. I'm going to show you what he does and what he specializes in because it's really super interesting. That there was more than one assailant necessary to accomplish the crime in the time frame alleged. Specifically, he asserts that, listen up, this is huge, there is a direct and indirect evidence that attempts were made by the suspect or suspects to clean up the crime scene after the homicides. That's huge. So you have a forensic specialist who's written, by the way, over 20 books on criminal psychology. They're considered textbooks. They are studied. He studies forensics and he teaches forensics. And he's saying there is evidence that the suspect or suspects attempted to clean up the crime scene. So now you've got to have somebody that can kill 4 people on 2 floors in a matter of minutes. I have that time frame around 10 minutes. The prosecution will tell you it's 16 minutes.
Says 13.
And the prosecution will tell you it happens in 2 to 4 minutes, and that's totally believable. 2 to 4 minutes. That's what the prosecution's saying. The actual murders only took 2 to 4 minutes. All right. So this specialist says there's direct and indirect evidence, direct and indirect. I can't hit this enough. Direct and indirect evidence that attempts were made by the suspects to clean up the crime after the homicides. That's supposed to happen within a matter of minutes, which would take far longer than the time interval that is alleged by the state. And 2, listen to this. And I believe this is a grammatical thing that's kind of, the grammar is bad, but I think I know exactly what it means. Pay attention to the wording. I hope you can see it on YouTube and TikTok well. 2, there were multiple weapons used against Kaylee Gonzalez, and Xana and Ethan appeared to have been attacked at the same time. Now that's a big run-on sentence, and it could be read several different ways, but that's what I believe that the huge things are. There were multiple weapons used on Kaylee, not the others, on Kaylee. Multiple weapons, not just the K-bar knife that we're missing, and the attacks on Xana and Ethan appear to happen at the same time, which would mean one assailant, like I've been saying for a long time. I think there was 2 people in the house, one on the top floor, one on the second floor, and that they were happening at the same time. And that's what this forensic specialist, who's written 20 books in this situation, has said. There is evidence not only that Xana and Ethan were attacked at the same time as Kaylee, that Kaylee was attacked with 2 weapons, or at least more than 1 weapon, and that they happened simultaneously. And there was efforts to clean up the crime scene afterwards. No way in hell that's happening in about 10, 13 minutes, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Now, by the way, I saw, Gray Hughes Investigates, does a little 3D model, and he shows this walkthrough on a 3D model and how he claims you can do the murders in 4 minutes. And he does it by walking into a room and then shaking the mouse for a couple seconds, saying, here's the attack. I'm going to shake the mouse. See that right now there's an attack going on. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to go down here. Here, I'm going to shake the mouse for a little bit. There's another attack.
That easy? You just shake a mouse?
You shakes a mouse and it simulates the attack happening. And it's like, see, clearly it can be done in 4 minutes. I think that's horrible, but that's his right to do so. I'm giving my opinions as well. So here's another key. So the state submitted only rebuttal information about Detective Gilbertson. So Gilbertson, this detective, brought in somehow Brent Turvy, the expert on forensics, who said it was probably more than one. There's evidence to say there was more than one person at the crime. Now, here's where the state's going to focus their case on. Brent Turvy, the expert, didn't rule out it was possible for one person to do it all. He just said that in his expert opinion, it looks like it was more than one person and that more than one weapon was used, and that there's evidence that they were trying to clean up the crime and couldn't have happened in the time it said. But when pressed, apparently, he said, it's possible. Possible. I'll give grounds that it's possible. And so all the prosecution did is they want to do the rebuttal disclosure, where he said, oh yeah, it could be done in 4 minutes. Or it could be done by one person. In the rebuttal, the state disclosed that Detective Darren Gilbertson, a lead investigator for ISP in the case, the disclosure indicates he will testify that he and other investigators conducted timed runs at 1122 King Road to gain an understanding of the approximate time needed to have carried out the homicides. A report of the timed runs is attached in the disclosure. It was performed to determine if one person could carry out the homicide. His opinion was, or will be, that, depending on the suspect's pace and route, he could have carried out the crimes in approximately 2 to 4 minutes. I think that's insane. But They literally did it, and it says what they did. I think maybe it comes word for word in here that they walked through the case and then simulated the numbers of attacks. So it's like literally he walked up the stairs and said, okay, there was 7 wounds to Kaylee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there was X number of wounds to Maddie. 1. Okay, I can do that in about 15 seconds. Go downstairs, and that's how they did their timed run.
Fighting back, that's impossible.
Well, and that's part of this case. That's part of the case is they're saying that they were so intoxicated they couldn't fight back. Wait till you hear the logic on it, though. It's horrendous. All right, so the state has failed to disclose how Detective Gilbertson is an expert in timed runs. So that was the defense say, hey, how's he an expert in timed runs? The relevance, by the way, is minimal. The important data, such as the recordings, photographs, and notes of his experiment, have not been disclosed, and his opinion carries the risk of juror confusion and prejudice. So in other words, if you tell the juror, hey, I'm an expert and I can do it in 4 minutes, they're going to believe you. But you don't have any documents of this. You don't show how you did it. You don't show how you walked through it and show somebody. Oh, by the way, and you tore the house down, so they can't walk through it themselves and see if it's physically possible because you tore the house down. So anyways, and they point out in their prejudice against this that Detective Gilbertson was already familiar with the house when he did the experiment, and additionally the house had been vacated. The defendant also notes that the house had been torn down, so he's not able to conduct his own tests. So in other words, there's no way to repeat what he did, and he was familiar with the run and the house and the layout, and he was and the lights were on, all the things that may not have been the case at the time of the murders. So yeah, in a perfect condition, when you already know the whole layout and you already know where the victims are at in the house, and you know exactly, because remember, Kaylee wasn't even supposed to be there, by the way. Kaylee Gonzalez wasn't living there for weeks. She had apparently, according to today, I found out today, Steve Gonzalez said that Kaylee was living with them for 2 weeks and hadn't even been living in the house. She was there that night almost by accident. She was there at a party. In fact, Steve Gonzalez, I'm getting ahead of myself, Steve Gonzalez in an interview on Drunk Turkey just recently, and why he's going around still doing interviews with everybody and the dog when everybody else has to be quiet, I want to understand. But he indicated that Kaylee, in fact, the killer may have targeted that house on that night because Kaylee was going to be there. That's a real shocker for Steve to even say, because over and over again they're trying to act like Kaylee wasn't the target. She was the target. I've said that over and over again, that I believe, again, that's speculation, so let me quit saying she is the target because I don't know, but I believe she was the target based on the fact that Steve Gonzalez said she received the worst wounds, and Steve Gonzalez said it's possible the reason why the killer picked that night was because Kaylee was there when she wasn't normally there. And so again, when they do the timed runs, the whole point that I'm getting to on the timed runs is the killer had to know that Kaylee, if that was the case, that Kaylee was his victim, that she was going to be there that night. Because according to Steve, she hadn't even been staying there for 2 weeks. So how did the killer know where she was going to be? That she was going to be upstairs bedroom with Maddie? How did he know all those things? So again, the timed run assumes that the detective knows exactly where everybody's going to be in the house and can walk through it and get it done in about 4 minutes. That's if you know all those details. But did the killer know those details? Did they know where Kaylee was going to be? I don't know. Whether Detective Gilbertson's opinions are relevant will depend on what Mr. Turvy and Dr. Orr opine at trial. So this is basically Hippler saying, look, once again, I'm not going to toss out anything that the prosecution wants to say, and your whole argument against whether or not you can bring up this evidence depends on what he says at court. If Mr. Turvy brings up the whole there was multiple assailants, then sure, you can talk about it. But if he doesn't bring it up on the stand, then no, you can't talk about it. So while Dr. Turvy does not specifically state in his report that one assailant could not have accomplished the murders in the short time frame alleged by the state, he infers as much through his opinion that there was evidence of a cleanup effort at the crime scene, which could have taken significantly longer period of time. So the defense, I mean, this is huge, people, right? Because some of you call us true crime observers nutbags because we come up with these theories about, where do you get this idea that there was multiple killers in the house? Most of us figured it out because the time doesn't make sense. And now you have a forensic specialist. And by the way, I told you I wanted to show you something about him, so let's get that on the screen. This is a website for Brent Turvy, PhD in forensic science and a forensic criminologist. It talks about his books, of which there are over 20. But I want you to read this. He's been basically a forensic scientist and criminologist and testifying in trials for nearly 30 years. Dr. Turvy...
Over 30 years.
Over 30, is it over? Yeah. So since 1996, Dr. Turvy has performed casework as a forensic scientist, crime scene analyst, and crime reconstructionist, forensic criminologist, and/or criminal profiler for law enforcement agencies. He works for law enforcement and police and prosecutors, attorney clients, and private entities all over the world. Now, it's going to get big here in a second. This includes consultations, forensic assessments, and expert testimony on both criminal and civil matters. These cases tend to involve sexual assault. I know I can't say that on TikTok. SA. Oh my gosh. False allegations, shooting incidents, reconstructions, serial, you can see it on screen, serial homicides. Let me blow that up bigger for you. Here, let me see if I can get this. Since they're words that TikTok won't allow me to say because I'm not adult enough to say them, I'll blow it up for you. In purple, you can see that he deals with a certain type of event, right? Crime, a certain crime. Against women, a lot. Dr. Turvy maintains a caseload of femicides, which are a certain type of homicide of a certain type of nature, SA nature. God, I hate playing this game. Gender motivated crimes and domestic homicides. Again, there is an indication Kaylee Gonzalez received wounds. I'm gonna repeat over and over again, this is rumor. There were rumors online about the specifics that Kaylee Gonzalez, the wounds that she received. Her father admitted the wounds that Kaylee received were different than the rest of the people. Her points of impact were different. The points of impact were different. Rumors online.
Somebody said there was more than 50 wounds. Is that true?
I don't know. That's been stated. But again, Steve Gonzalez has confirmed Kaylee got it worse than everyone else and that the wounds that she received were different than everyone else. Rumors online indicated that Kaylee Gonzalez, and I'm going to use this word because I don't think it's going to get filtered, was eviscerated. If you don't know what that is, you'll need to look into it. She was eviscerated. That's a huge, huge thing. That takes time. You don't do that in just a matter of a couple of minutes kind of thing, that she was eviscerated. In addition, the rumor was that she received wounds somewhere below the hips and above the knees, which would fall right into Dr. Turvy's specialty, a femicide of a certain type of nature, a very certain type of attack, and domestic in nature, against females, violence against females. So, what does that indicate? Somebody had a relationship with Kaylee Gonzalez, in my opinion, and it was personal, and the wounds are personal, and the points of impact were personal. And the specialist that came in pointed it out because he's a specialist in that type of crime. Femicides, homicide against women, especially when it involves an S nature, right? Or the R word. And we know that Kaylee got it worse than everybody else. So again, Brian Kohberger has no known affiliation with Kaylee Gonzalez. In fact, any kind of connection between him and the girls so far that have been publicly made is about Maddie. Maddie was taken out very quickly, it sounds like, in her sleep, and then he spent time, the killer, on Kaylee, including a new revelation by Steve Gonzalez today that he punched Kaylee in the face. Why it is, I don't understand why Steve Gonzalez is allowed to continue to tell us details of the crime when nobody else is allowed to talk about it. He was on the Drunk Turkey and admitting that he doesn't want to go into all the details, but he added a new detail, that the killer punched her in the face, which he clearly says Brian Kohberger punched her in the face because he believes Brian Kohberger did it. But he wasn't there in the house, so we don't know. We still are going to try and find out who the killer is or who the killers were, because again, now we have this expert testimony in criminology saying it took two people and there was evidence that they were trying to cover up the crime as well.
Phoenix is saying that the retired FBI guy said it was a college student. He alleged it was someone on campus.
Yes, there's a lot of evidence of that. This, by the way, is the Drunk Turkey Show. You can see him showing on YouTube here. Drunk Turkey Show, Steve Gonzalez interview. If you look that up, you can see the interview. It just happened. And April 24th, live streamed April 24th. That was yesterday. That's Steve Gonzalez. He has time markers in here where you can jump to. Look there, you've got. They're talking about Kaylee's injuries. So right there, you can see, you can listen to Steve talk about how she was punched in the face and her injuries were different. You can jump to the Linda Leigh and the DoorDash. There's something here that you want to get. Oh yeah, they ask about alternate suspects. There's a section here about alternate suspects. And what I find interesting is when they ask Steve specifically about Jack DeCour. If you recall, Jack DeCour was the longtime boyfriend of over 5-6 years with Kaylee Gonzalez, who had broke up the relationship with him 3 weeks prior. It has now come out in this interview with definitive, I kind of knew these things already, but from Steve's own mouth on this video, that Jack DeCour was at the bar with him that night. He was hammered drunk. Something happened at the bar that night. I've been telling you that. The girls were frantically texting Jack DeCour, the ex-boyfriend, all night after they left the bar. I think something happened. I think Jack DeCour saw something. He was insanely jealous about his girlfriend, of his love of his life, as they repeated over and over again, and she went about flirting with another guy. Something set him over the edge. He was upset. He was hammered drunk. He was at the bar with them that night. They were trying to text him. Steve Gonsalves has moments of hesitation when they ask him if Jack DeCour had anything to do with it. Basically what he tells you is, I believe that we can prove Jack didn't have anything to do with it because, and he tells you that the police, the law enforcement, can track his phone and literally can see him tossing and turning in his bed. That they're so accurate with the cell phone data on Jack DeCour that they can tell when he's rolling over in his sleep. So therefore he has an airtight alibi. He was in bed asleep in his room because his phone shows activity as if he's rolling around in his bed at night. That means nothing to me. It doesn't mean Jack was there. He also opines that there's lots of surveillance around the area, and if Jack left the house, we would see him. Now, I want to point out to you, Jack doesn't even have to be the person who went into the house that night in order to be involved in this. If he wanted revenge against his girlfriend and he had somebody who was willing to do it for him, he could have established an alibi for himself. And I don't want to smear Jack DeCour. I don't know if he's guilty or not. I don't think he's guilty, but by the same token, Brian Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The point being is that even Steve Gonsalves, in my opinion, you can watch it for yourself and you tell me, has moments of hesitation where he will say, I'm convinced Brian Kohberger's the guy. And then when you start asking about, well, what about the fact that there's other people that could possibly do it? And he's like, well, I mean, yeah, if you stretch far enough, you can find other scenarios, kind of thing. So there's hesitation on his part. And let me tell you another thing of a personal nature on this rant. I guarantee you, in my opinion, this is speculation. I wish I could have my little speculation thing I put up in my long-form YouTube videos. This poor man, Steve Gonsalves, has replayed his daughter's death in his head 1,000,000 times. He's imagined to himself what she went through that night, what she saw. Did she wake up? What did she say? Did she beg for her life? He's going to go through this. He's going to have nightmares his entire life. So what happens is he sees Brian Kohberger in his mind every single time he's having these nightmares because he's been told Brian Kohberger's the killer. So yeah, he's convinced now Brian Kohberger killed his daughter, and he knows exactly how it happened because he's played it in his head 1,000,000 times. Anybody would. Any father, any person who lost a loved one he's going to try to imagine what did she go through in those final moments. So I don't blame him for having this reaction and being convinced that Brian Kohberger's the guy because he's been told by law enforcement over and over again Brian Kohberger's the guy, and he's replaying it in his mind over and over and over again, imagining what his daughter went through. So I don't blame him for being convinced and wanting justice. But it's easy for a person to obsess on what happened and try to imagine what your loved one went through, and then you're convinced that that's how it happened because you've seen it in your head 1,000,000 times. All right. Those are mostly the big jaw droppers for tonight. I want to give us a little bit of time now for, and we didn't make our goal, so I don't have to put on a humiliation filter. Is that good or bad? I mean, it would be nice to have gifts, but I'm not going to put on the humiliation filter tonight. So we're going to skip that unless, of course, something comes in brilliant all of a sudden. Any last minute questions on...
Look at YouTube, the last few comments.
On Coberger alone. So let's see here. Shelby, thanks for driving in 6.8 hours to get some inside info. Here. So many suspects, so many drug busts soon after based around Emma and her gang crew, boyfriend, and frats clean up the Farley being there. Yeah, there's 1,000,000 theories related. By the way, this specialist, good thing you pointed out the drug thing because that's in here as well. This specialist, Turvy, has to do with homicides, including of that kind of nature that involve drug crimes. So that's one of his specialties as well. So yeah, multiple people need getaway drivers. Right. So if there were more than one person in the house, they probably had a getaway driver. I have a video on YouTube talking about, or a TikTok that says, what if Brian Kohberger was simply the getaway driver? Doesn't mean he's innocent, but it also doesn't mean necessarily he went into the house. So he could have been involved and it could have been other people. There could have been multiple people in that house. That's what one guy who wrote 20 books on forensic psychology and teaches courses, essentially they use him as a textbook on criminal forensics, said it was more than one assailant, and the victims were attacked on 2 different floors at the same time using 2 different weapons, more than one weapon, especially on Kaylee. I don't know if I'm going to speculate about the DoorDash driver. I've been tabling that discussion for a long time. That's from YouTube. Any other questions on either of the platforms? Holy crap, we've made a new record. We've actually got more people on YouTube than we have on TikTok. That's the first time. Holy crap. That's huge. By the way, on both platforms, please like and subscribe if you haven't done so. I cover these two cases, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going to start doing, I think, a regular thing with another TikToker named Bombshell. He's also on YouTube. He's getting that channel started. So we will be going live together on Mondays for a while, at least, as we, until the audience decides that they don't like the two of us together. But so far, people have loved it when Birdie and I get together. We talk a little bit about Coberger's case. He's not up to speed on Luigi, and he's given me permission to get his audience a little up to speed on Luigi next time we get together, so that's going to happen, I believe. But we also branch into conspiracy theories and all kinds of crazy stuff, so it's a little different than my normal show. So Monday's going to be basically Birdie and I, and we're going to cover a lot of stuff. Thank you, Rose, for saying that the two of us are an awesome team. That's amazing. Thank you. So we're going to start doing that and see how people like that. So again, like and subscribe to both of our channels, mine and on TikTok, and to YouTube. Also, Birdie's channel will be going live together next on Monday, and exactly time, I think we're going to work that out. He normally starts at 5:30 my time. I usually start at 6. He was okay with letting the room warm up a little bit before I get there, so maybe he'll go at 5:30 my time, and I'll just start at 6 like I normally do. But that my hour will be with him on Mondays. Any last minute questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and say goodnight. Thank you, everyone, for coming, for supporting both channels. It's amazing, amazing. We're getting a lot of traction. I love that we have about the same number of people on TikTok and YouTube. And last thing, I will have a long form video coming out, I think tomorrow, on the Idaho 4 case. I'm reviewing Howard Bloom's book, When the Night Comes Falling, and I'm going to do another couple of chapters of that book review. I've got a full book review series on Luigi Mangione called Luigi's Bookshelf on YouTube that covers An American Sickness by Elizabeth Rosenthal, and I'm also doing Howard Bloom's book, When the Night Comes Falling, and the Idaho 4 murders, reading through it chapter by chapter and offering my opinions and insights on those authors of those books and how they relate to the case. Everyone have a good night. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody. Thanks
See you
for
guys.
coming. Good night.